Hi everyone, it's Dr. Alexis Connison and I'm back for another Facebook Live. It is Wednesday at noon and I am so happy to have some of you joining me here today, either live or perhaps watching the recording at a later date. So just a little bit about me for those of you who don't know me. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm in private practice here in New York City, and I specialize in working with people with different types of body image issues and overeating disorders. So it ties in really closely with what we're going to be talking about today, which is body image. And summer tends to be a really difficult time for people. I mean, body image struggles can come up any time of the year, but I think especially as we start to enter the summer season, we become just inundated with messaging from the diet industry, from the weight loss industry, from the media, telling us that our bodies have to look one specific way, and that is usually a very narrow beauty ideal of thin that has kind of transformed over the years. More recently, from a demand that we be as thin as possible to a demand that we be as fit as possible. Either way, very destructive messaging and really takes a toll on our self-esteem. It can increase our risk for eating disorders and disordered eating, and it's just a part of our culture that makes us feel miserable. I mean, I don't know how else to say it other than it just really makes us feel like crap about ourselves. So I'm going to be talking about some things that we can do to recognize, that the path to healing, the way to feeling better about our bodies is not in changing our bodies. It's in recognizing that the demands that are placed upon us by our culture are really dysfunctional and really problematic and are invested in keeping us feeling stuck and feeling bad about ourselves. So once we can recognize that the problem is not our bodies, but the problem is the culture that we live in, we can start to try to find our way out and start to really heal ourselves and recognize ways to deeply and authentically care for ourselves in the current body that we're in. So I'm going to jump right in, and if you're here watching live, feel free to say hello. If you have a question or a comment, I can see it if you type it into the comment box, and I would love to have this be a conversation. And I'm going to start off talking just about some of the kind of my top. Hi Sharon, thanks for joining me. You've been such a loyal fan, loyal viewer. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Hi Judy. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to hop in. But I'm going to start off talking about some of my tips. So I have 3 tips that I think are my most powerful things. You know, obviously resolving issues around body image, I don't want to simplify it and say do these 3 things and everything's going to be better and, you know, your problems will be cured. As a psychologist, I believe deeply in the power of therapy, but I know that's not accessible for everybody, and I know that not everyone is going to come and see me here in my office or see your local psychotherapist. So I just wanted to give 3 tips that I think can help us start to find our way out of the body hatred that we can be so immersed in. So one of my tips, I would say the number 1 most important thing that we can do to try to shift out of patterns of body hatred and improve our body image is self-compassion. So what is self-compassion? I talk a lot about self-compassion. Often people say, like, what does that really mean? What does that really look like? It's hard to answer because I think it's different for everybody, but it is approaching ourselves rather than kind of the harsh, punitive stance that we often take towards ourselves. So for those of us who struggle with body image, or just for those of us who are human, we tend to be really hard on ourselves. We tend to give ourselves a really hard time, and we have a harsh internal voice that's just going and berating us all the time. pretty much all the time. It's really incessant. So when we can start to notice this voice, we can start to shift to say, okay, that voice might still be there, but is there a way to approach ourselves with more kindness? And I often think of this as, you know, how we might approach or interact with a child. I mean, could any of us imagine saying the things that we say to ourselves to a child? Most of us, I hope, I pray, the vast majority of us wouldn't, because it's cruel, it's abusive, it's, you know, I always say many, you know, would be arrested for child abuse if we spoke to our children the way that we talk to ourselves. So self-compassion is really about trying to come at ourselves from a place of fierce kindness and acceptance and love, even if we don't feel that way, even if we feel like we hate our bodies, even if we feel so kind of bogged down in body hatred, we can still come to ourselves with a way of saying, oh gosh, you know, I am struggling right now. I am feeling so bad about my body. This is rough. Like, this sucks right now. How can I be kinder to myself? How can I treat myself as I would treat perhaps a child or a loved one or even a pet who's going through a difficult time? So I think that when we can start to approach ourselves with kindness, we right away are starting to shift away from the body hatred. We still, you know, again, this doesn't mean that we love our bodies. And I think that's a big misperception of body positivity, is that we think that body positivity means that we have to feel awesome and positive about our bodies all the time. There's very, very few people, I'll say especially women, who feel great about their bodies all the time. We live in a toxic culture that teaches us that our bodies are bad. We live in a culture that teaches us that our bodies are tools to be manipulated, and that if we don't meet this very narrow ideal, we have failed in some way. And this doesn't only affect people, you know, I'll say that this affects people really across the body and size spectrum, because I see clients, you know, coming into my office who do pretty much, you know, approximate the beauty ideals that our society holds so high, and they too are miserable. Because it's not about our body size, it's about the way that we're thinking about ourselves. And when we feel that our bodies aren't good enough, it doesn't matter what your size is, we feel like crap about ourselves. This is, you know, I want to just kind of also say that's not to dismiss the very real role of weight stigma and the compounded difficulties that come of living in a larger body in a culture that teaches us that those bodies are not okay. But people in larger bodies are not, you know, the exclusive holders of body dissatisfaction or body hatred that really can affect people across the weight spectrum. So my number one tip for improving body image is self-compassion. And this is very closely related with mindfulness and mindfulness practices. And there's a lot of practices you can look on some of the apps that I recommend. I have absolutely no financial ties with these apps. But if you look on something like Insight Timer, or even just on YouTube, there are tons of apps about loving kindness and how to foster a more compassionate attitude towards ourselves and towards the world around us. There was a quote that I posted on Instagram earlier in the week by Pema Chodron, who, and I hope I don't butcher it, but it says something along the lines of, you know, when we can be kind to ourselves, then we can let the kindness flood into the world. And that's how we really make changes in the world. It starts with ourselves and treating ourselves with love and compassion. So if that's a struggle, I would really encourage you to look for some self-compassion based meditations, because sometimes the idea of being kind to ourselves and being compassionate towards ourselves can feel so alien. It can feel so foreign when we are just immersed in body hatred. And when we are immersed in that way of thinking, when we've never been exposed to like, hey, I could actually, be kind to myself, that feels really foreign. It just feels like weird and unnatural. And sometimes we have to really intentionally foster that sense of self-compassion. And the best way I know how to do that is through meditation, is through mindfulness, specifically through self-compassion based meditations and through loving kindness meditation. So you can find lots online. If you want specifics of what some of my favorites are, feel free to ask me afterwards and I can put up some links. And there's also, I believe, some self-compassion embedded in the track that I did for Happify. So that was a program that I consulted with to create a mindful eating program, a mindful eating track within their program. And I do think that there is, if my memory is serving me correctly, a chapter there or a week or section there on compassion. So if anyone here has done the Happify track more recently than I've created it, feel free to let me know if that's accurate or not. But yeah, so self-compassion, we've got to start there. Part of the reason that I think it's so important to start with self-compassion is we often think that if we accept ourselves and are kind to ourselves and are compassionate to ourselves, and that means that we are going to be stuck, right? So I hear people say like, well, having compassion, like how can I have compassion for myself? I don't like myself right now. I don't want to stay where I am. Or how can I accept myself? Doesn't that mean I'm just giving up? I'm kind of waving the white flag or admitting defeat. And it's completely the opposite. It couldn't be any more the opposite. It's the place where we're immersed in self-hatred and that harshness and criticism and shame. That's when we're stuck. When we're in that place, we cannot move forward. It's from a place of self-compassion that we're able to foster kindness towards ourselves and really think about how to care for ourselves in the best way possible, and that's where change comes from. So for those of you who may be worried that like, oh my gosh, I can't be compassionate to myself because that means I want to stay where I am. First of all, secret of life, we are never staying where we are. We are always moving, always changing. By definition, time is ticking forward and we're always in a different moment. So we're never, really that stuck. But if you're feeling stuck, it's that self-hatred that really makes us dig our heels in and shut down and not look at what we could do to try to make changes. So self-compassion, number one tip to improving body image. My number two tip is something that I read about recently in a research study, and I thought was really interesting because it was so simple. So there was a study, and you can read more about it on my blog for Psychology Today. I'm not going to go into all the details and bore you with all the research all the research details here, but if you are interested in the science behind this and what the research study looked at, you can check out my blog for Psychology Today. It's called Eating Mindfully, and you'll see the post. I think it's called like one simple thing you can do to improve your body image. And that post is about a research study that they did that found that when people do a brief body gratitude exercise, they actually have significant improvements in their body image. So what the researchers did, and you can try this at home, is they asked participants to think of, I think, like 5 things about their body that they feel grateful for. And we can get really stuck in every way that our body is not doing what we want it to do, what we think it should do, the way that we think it should look. We focus so much on what we perceive as our body failing us, that we really don't give our body much credit for like all of the amazing things that it's doing. Like, we're here, we're breathing, we're alive, our body is doing the best that it can to take care of us. And I think that's like a really amazing thing. I have a lot of gratitude towards my body for just all of the things that happen without my intentional awareness, even like the digestive processes, the way that our body, signals to us, that we need food, and then takes in the food and uses it to nourish all of our cells and keep us alive and keep us breathing. And it's a really miraculous process, all the things that our body does, all the things that are going on inside of us that we really aren't even aware of. And even you go into so much more detail, and if there's any medical professionals, they probably could talk about it in a lot more detail than I could. But it's just really, I think that's a fascinating thing to think about. But anyway, back to the research study, they found that when people thought of 5 things that they felt grateful for about their body, and picked 3 of those things and journaled about them. So just wrote a few sentences about each of the 3 things. You could just pick 3 out of the 5 that they felt grateful for. They had significant improvements in their body image. So just like that simple act of taking a moment, I think the whole exercise could be done in maybe 5-10 minutes, and writing down, I feel grateful for X, Y, and Z about my body, has been shown in research to significantly improve body image. And they compared it to a group of people who just wrote about, I think, something else not related to their body, just kind of a neutral journaling prompt. So I love that tip because it's so simple. Can't we all try to take 10 minutes and think of, 5 things and journal about 3 of them that we feel grateful for towards your body? It might be the fact that your body, was able to get you to where you need to go, whether that's through walking or some kind of even assistive walking device, that, we're still able to get out and about. And even for people who aren't, that we are breathing, that our body is digesting, that our body is working to take care of us the best ways that we can. And, you can really think about uniquely what it is for you. If you love to dance, that your body is able to move, your hips are able to shake, you're able to participate in those activities that you love. For any mothers who who carried children in their own body, who grew human beings in their womb, that's a pretty miraculous process itself. So I think there's a lot that we can be grateful for about our bodies. And when we can, just kind of reframing and shifting our mindset a little bit away from, my body doesn't look the way I'm told it's supposed to, my stomach is too big, my thighs squished together, my knees hurt, my hips hurt, whatever all the things are that usually call the bulk of our attention around our bodies. Taking just a few minutes to shift that and to think about, what am I grateful for? What is working for me? Can be really, really powerful. And I just love when the research, backs that up and tells us that actually, that simple exercise is going to improve body image. So, foster body gratitude is my second tip. 1, self-compassion. 2, foster body gratitude. And my number 3 tip is to start to be really critical of the media that we're consuming. So I'm so happy and grateful that you're all here and kind of finding your way into the anti-diet movement, into the body positivity movement, into the kind of weight neutral, health at every size movement, because that's what this is all about. It's about recognizing that, like I said in the beginning, our bodies are not broken. That's a lie that we've been taught. I could go into why we've been taught that lie. It will take much longer than the 10 minutes that we have left here today. But that is a lie that we have been taught and believe. Many of us deeply believe in our core to be true, that we are broken. We are not broken. Our culture is broken. diet culture is broken. There is a lot of money invested in teaching us and selling us the idea that our bodies are not as they should be and that we need to fix them by buying their products that don't work. It's kind of circular logic, but once we can start to recognize that the problem is not our bodies, the problem is our distorted culture that teaches us to hate our bodies, we can start to be more critical about what we're consuming. So social media, I think, is a great place to start because it has opened up a platform for so many more voices to be heard. Right? Like, you know, before social media, all we had access to was the mainstream media, right? What was put out by, you know, television, movies, magazines, advertisements. And I will tell you, when I was, you know, growing up and in my formative years, I had zero access to any ideas that we were supposed to look anything other than what I saw in the magazines. And I'm talking about, even I remember reading like the teen magazines and, you know, marketing really to a young audience and feeling, you know, distraught that my body didn't look the same as these women, girls in the magazines. And that is a very destructive message for young girls. It's a very destructive message for women. So I think we have to be critical about what we're taking in. And now with social media, we have so many more options of what to take in and how to consume media. So I just posted yesterday on Instagram. If you're not following me on Instagram, I'm at the Anti-Diet Plan. And I posted just a few of my favorite, I posted a few of my favorite anti-diet, body positive, health at every size, social justice accounts for people to follow. So that's just some of my favorites, and I invite you to share some of yours. A lot of moving out of body hatred and embracing a more accepting and positive stance towards our bodies is about community. And I think that community right now lives largely in social media. So I think that when we can start to follow people who are promoting a different message, you know, also kind of confirming that there's a wide range of different ways that bodies can look, and there's a wide range of different bodies that are beautiful, and we can be beautiful at, you know, different shapes, sizes, colors. You know, that is the beauty of humanity. That when we are exposed to that on a day-to-day basis, it changes the way that we think. So the flip side of that is getting all of that diet culture, kind of mainstream, thin ideal, fitspo, thinspo, whatever, you know, whatever they're calling it these days. You know what I'm talking about. The accounts that are promoting one very specific way to look, whether they're doing that through, you know, obvious weight loss messaging, whether they're doing that under the guise of health and fitness, it's really important to get that stuff out of your viewing, you know, out of your viewing range. So unsubscribe to any email. So also, this is another thing that I find is that many people, you know, who are making the transition away from dieting into more mindful eating and you know, joining the anti-diet movement, they, you know, we've all had history with the diet industry, and many of us have signed up for emails from Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, Whole30, Paleo, whatever the plans are, and we're still getting inundated with their advertisements. And it can be kind of tempting because they know how to sell to us. They know what our pain points are. They know what our vulnerabilities are. And they promise us what, you know, we think we, you know, what they think we want to hear. And you know what, like, let's be honest, for a lot of us, it is what we want to hear. The promise that we can lose 15 pounds in 15 days or get our body, you know, beach body ready, whatever that means, have a six pack and, you know, lose weight or be fitter in, you know, this really short period of time, like, even if we're working to improve our body image and working towards a weight neutral approach, I think that there's a very deep, you know, kind of emotional piece of us that still clings to that promise. And when our inbox is filled with, you know, promises to say that these things can happen, even though rationally, like, we know that it doesn't, we've all been on diets, we all know it doesn't work, it feels just really enticing. So a lot of the time we, you know, just need to get all of that out of our inbox. So again, I have an article about this on my blog about how to unsubscribe from diet culture. And it's about, you know, like, hitting, you know, that little button at the bottom of those emails that say unsubscribe. You can do that, hit unsubscribe. Doesn't always work. I hear about a lot of people still getting messages from Jenny Craig, even though they've unsubscribed multiple times. You can just send it to spam, hit that spam folder, you know, that will mark as spam. If there's a way to report it, I encourage you to do so. And you can also create a little folder that's just kind of like the diet death folder, and direct all of the diet messaging right into that folder that you then hit delete, delete, delete. Do not look in that folder other than to delete everything. So that's one way to get some of the diet spam and diet culture messages out of our, like, email box. And on social media, it's just about going through any kinds of accounts that don't make you feel good about yourself. You know, again, it's if you're following, you know, kind of hashtag fitspo or thinspo, or a lot of the times, this is where I think can get really sneaky. A lot of the times these accounts are framed in the body positive movement, and they will be tagged with, like, body positive, but clearly they're not promoting the idea that there is a diverse range of beauty. They're promoting a very narrow beauty ideal, but because body positivity is so popular right now, they're kind of capitalizing on that and co-opting the language. So it can be, diet culture can be really sneaky, and it's important to, you know, just kind of go through your feed, and you probably know what those accounts are. You know, when you go through and you say, oh, you know, this person, you know, looks better than me in their bikini, or this person is making me feel bad about what I'm eating, or, you know, just not those accounts that are not working for you. Unfollow all of that stuff. And then there's so many great lists of body positive, health at every size, social justice people who are out there who have a voice now, because social media has provided a wider range. And I encourage you to follow, you know, just fill up your feed with all of those positive goodies, all of those positive messages, and it will over time kind of start to shift the way that we think. And, you know, there's some thought, and I think there's some research to support this, that when we start to see diverse images of beauty and diverse, you know, body sizes represented in the media, it does change the way that we feel about ourselves, and it can help shift us out of that place of body hatred. So we're almost out of time. I'm going to recap real quick the top 3 ways that I think you can help shift out of body hatred this summer. Number 1, foster a sense of self-compassion. That can be through meditation, through loving kindness meditation, or even just by thinking, you know, would I say this to my child? The things that we say to ourselves, would I say this to my child? Am I being kind to myself, or am I being cruel and abusive to myself? And trying to approach ourselves with that fierce, radical kindness as much as we can. So that's my number 1 tip, self-compassion. Number 2, foster a sense of body gratitude. Try that journaling exercise where you're gonna think about 5 things that you appreciate and feel grateful for about your body, and journal about 3 of them. It could take 5 minutes. And if you're looking for fuller instructions on that, you can check out my blog post on Psychology Today. My blog column is called Eating Mindfully, and I think the article is called one simple exercise that will improve your body image. If you'd like, I can post a link to that as well. Number 3, unsubscribe from diet culture, unfollow social media accounts that make you feel like crap about yourself, and fill up your feed and fill up your inbox with body positive, health at every size, advocates, activists who are really doing a lot of amazing work to try to help men and women break free from the lie that we've been taught that we're not good enough as we are, and work to accept ourselves now and live our fullest, best lives in our bodies as they are right now at this moment. So we're just about out of time. I want to thank everybody for joining me here today. And if there's something that you want to hear about on the next Facebook Live, feel free to comment below. You can email me, info@drconason.com. You can find more information about me on my website, including a way to sign up for my free 30-day starter course, which is a introduction to mindful eating and the anti-diet plan, and we'll give you some tips on how to develop a meditation practice, how to start being kinder to yourself, and how to start listening to our body instead of what diet culture is telling us. You can find that on my website as well. That's at drconason.com. So thank you again for joining me. I hope everyone has a wonderful day and a wonderful summer, and a summer filled with fun, joy, and lots of peace in our bodies, and not letting, hopefully going out and doing all of the things that we want to do, trying to free ourselves from that body shame that can feel so intense. So thank you again for joining me, and I hope to see you next week.